Hey neighbors, Kevin here at the etrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Air Lift's LoadLifter 5000 air spring kit here on our 2025 Ram 1500. The Ram 1500 is a super popular vehicle because it gives you the best of both worlds. It gives you that truck so that you can haul all your stuff, maybe tow a trailer, but it's also going to give you a much softer suspension because it has coil springs for the rear suspension. Along with that though, you'll typically see a lot more sag. I see a lot of Rams out on Highway 70 when I'm coming back and forth to work here, and typically they're hauling an enclosed trailer and they're really nose high. What happens with that is you start to lose your handling, you lose braking power, and you're going to put more wear and tear on your suspension and your tires. So you're going to wear out those back tires way quicker than you will the front, and you're just going to end up increasing your costs over time on all this maintenance that you have to do with your vehicle. So that's where our LoadLifter air springs are going to come into play, help lift you back up so that you have that level ride height and you still have that comfortability. These air springs are going to go from 0 psi up to 100 psi. Now you're not always going to be wanting to ride at that higher level. That will impact your quality when you're unloaded. If you have nothing in the vehicle and you're sitting there and hitting those bumps in the road with a higher PSI, you're going to notice it in the cab right away. So typically what we do is just air down to 5 PSI whenever we're done with whatever we're hauling. That's going to help protect the bag, so that way as the suspension compresses and rebounds back, it's not going to tear the bag up because it's not too loose. So you want to make sure that you are filling up your air springs back to 5 PSI at minimum. And with ours today, we didn't add a compressor, so we do have our Schrader valves at the back of the vehicle. This is typically where you're going to mount the Schrader valves just because it's an easier location to get to, and there's not as much stuff in your way. I also typically like to do it on the driver's side because most of the gas stations that you go to, the air machine's always going to be on the driver's side. Now, if you don't want to have to search for gas stations or some other place where you can fill up your air springs, maybe you're out at a job site and you need to fill it up right away, that's where a compressor is going to come into play. And if you don't know exactly which one you want, please reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to help figure out exactly which one is going to match the PSI rating of the air springs and still fit your vehicle. With these air springs, you are going to have a 5,000 pound capacity, but that does not mean that you can actually throw 5,000 pounds in the bed of your truck. Instead, you will still be limited by the vehicle's capacity, so you are going to want to check out your owner's manual and figure out what you are able to safely haul. These are only meant to lift the vehicle back up to ride height within that weight capacity that the vehicle has. So with that, your air springs aren't going to be working to their full capacity, so they should last for the lifetime of your vehicle. Taking a closer look at our air springs, you can see that it's the double convoluted airbag. It has custom mount brackets so that you're not having to drill into your frame or do any extra crazy stuff. It's going to fit right in. With this one specifically, you are going to have to cut off the mount for your jounce bumper, which can be a little bit tricky as there's a lot of other stuff kind of in your way. It is a little bit time consuming putting all this in and kind of working it into place, but this is a pretty easy install. If this is something that you feel is just a little bit too challenging for you, please use our dealer locator and we can help you find a local shop that'll get you all set up. Now that we've gone over some of the details with this air spring kit, let's show you how we got it installed. Starting off our install, I've already dropped our spare tire, and now I'm going to take out our heat shield that goes around the spare tire just to give us some more room to work. It's going to be a 10mm socket, and we're going to have a bolt right here, one in the middle, and then one at the back of it, and these back ones and the middle ones are on the frame rail itself. So you might need an extension as well to kind of get up in there. I'm going to pull the outer sides first and then the middle one so I can have it hold it while I drop it. Next step is going to be removing our factory jounce bumpers. That's this rubber right here, and this isn't really held in with much, it's just kind of pressed in. So we'll pop that out, and then what we're going to do is we're going to draw a little line with a paint marker because our new bracket is going to need to sit flush with our frame rail. So we're going to have to cut off a little bit of this bracket, not the whole thing, but we also want to be very careful that we don't actually cut into the frame rail. So we'll get that marked up and cut off. Depending on which tool you're using to cut off the old jounce bumper mounts, you might need to drop your exhaust as well. So if you have a dual exhaust, we have a hanger towards the ends on both sides, and I just pop that off and I use the strap to kind of hold it up. The issue isn't really that it's too close to the jounce bumper, it's just Sawzalls are super bulky, so it's kind of getting in my way back here, so that way I can just kind of move it around and get it out of the way for the Sawzall as I'm cutting it. But your application might be different if you're using something a little bit smaller. We're at a point now where I can kind of just break it loose. I don't want to take a chance at it popping out and hitting the exhaust here. We'll just work that back and forth. So coming back with the grinding wheel, we want to make sure that this is nice and flat. That way our bracket's going to fit. So right now I am hitting that back side. I've already grinded this down a bit and kind of smoothed over any burrs that we had there. Now we smoothed over all the burrs and we're pretty flat here. The bracket's sitting flush with our frame rail. We're going to take some spray paint. You can just use some black spray paint, clear coat, whatever you got laying around. We're going to cover up all those scratches we just made on our frame and on those old brackets so that they don't rust. And while that's drying, we'll just do the same thing on the other side and get that other bracket off. While our paint's drying on our bracket up there, why don't we go ahead and get our air bellows all ready to go. We'll start out. There's going to be 2 ports on one side and 3 ports on the other. These 2 ports are going to be for our bolts, same with those 2 right there. This larger one is going to be for our air fitting. We'll take one of our roll plates, we'll place it on, and then we'll take our 90-degree elbow air fitting and we will start threading that in. You're going to go hand tight, and then you'll take a 13mm wrench and you're going to go 1 full rotation and then another half rotation to fully tighten it down. And this is on a swivel, so you can turn that around so the bolt can get fully tightened and then you can have it set exactly how it needs to. Next, we will grab our upper bracket. It's going to have all these slots. This larger one in the middle is going to be where our air fitting fits through. We'll flip that up, put our air fitting through, and then through the holes up top, we can see down to those 2 ports where our bolts are going to go in. That's going to be your bolt with the hex bolt. There's going to be 4 of those included in your kit. There'll be a split lock washer and then a flat washer. I'll stick that in. And then I'm going to put my 2 fingers in here, kind of grip the bolt as it goes down, and we'll try to line this all up. There's a little bit of a game here trying to get it in place, but not too hard. And one thing you can also do is grab your socket, which is 9/16. Kind of help spin that into place. And I think we're not lining up just perfect. I'll pull that back. Our roll plate's getting in the way. Get it started, and then just a little bit with that socket. You don't want to go tight yet because we are going to have to adjust this kind of back and forth so that we get it to fit right with our frame. So just a little tight, not too much. The orientation of your brackets is going to matter. On the upper one, we want this slanted side facing towards the in and the flat side facing out. When we flip it over, I'm also going to flip this side around so that we have the orientation correct for our rear, or our lower one. On the back side, so towards the rear of the vehicle, you're going to have this portion of the bracket sitting, and this is going to be the side that's fitting up against the roll plate, which we can throw on right now. We'll pop that into place. So we can flip that over. We'll line up our holes, and then we're going to have 2 little black bolts to pop into place, and these are going to require a 5.5mm Allen key to tighten down. Get that outer one started and just kind of hand tight, and then we can pop in the other one. And once you have that nice and hand tight, you can go ahead and torque it down to the specifications listed in the instruction manual. All right. On our driver's side, there's going to be a mount here that holds our brake lines. We're going to move this up just a little bit more because we need some of this space right up here. So we're going to use a 13mm socket, and we'll get the factory bolt out. With that bolt out, we can pop in our spacer, and in that same bag is going to be a black hex bolt as well with a flange on it, and we're going to pop that right through. And we'll tighten that back down. That's going to use the same 13mm socket. For our next step, we're going to be installing a frame bracket that's going to attach to the top bracket of our air spring. It's going to have two little holes right there for it. To attach to our frame, we're going to have two holes right here. And if we look up there, it's going to be a matching pattern. We're going to have our bolt stick out from here, and we're going to use this larger hole to fish our hardware through. Now, they only give you 2 fish wires. So you do want to be careful, you don't want to ruin them. I already did the other side and had a little issue with one of the fish wires, so going forward, I'm only going to put about 3/4 of the way through. I'm going to leave a little bit on there because the last one kind of just stuck to the bolt and didn't want to come off, because I was just going to try and reuse them. If you don't want to have to try and reuse them, you can also pick them up. These are 3/8 fish wire for our 3/8 bolt here. So I'll show you how to get this in. I like to bend a little corner on the end, so that way when I push it through, I can easily get it to go right in that hole. And pop right over. And pop right up. Now, since I don't have a second fish wire right now, I'm going to go ahead and throw on the bracket, and I'm going to take that back through that fish wire. Pop that up there, and when it's up there, I'm going to put my finger against it, and now I can twist this off without losing the bolt inside the frame. Put on our flange nut, and I'm just going to do a couple threads just to hold it up there, and we will put our other carriage bolt onto that fish wire again, and same thing, we don't want to fully put it in just so that we can get it out a little bit easier. Stick our fish wire through. Now, since the bracket's in the way, it's a little bit harder to see. That's where that little hook is going to be important. We can line it up. With our upper bracket for the frame in place and loosely fit, we're going to slide in on our driver's side a carriage bolt. So this is going to need to go in first because we're not going to be able to get it on afterwards. On the passenger side, you can easily fit it in that spot and not have an issue. So for this one, we'll pop it in, and we want to make sure that we are setting these correctly. Like I said before, we want that slanted side facing in on the upper bracket, and we want these little fins sitting on the back side because they're going to butt up against the bracket on here. So let's find a good spot to slip this through. I have to come over this way. And if you need to, you can kind of compress the air bellow just a bit. That bolt that we stuck in on the bottom bracket, we're going to slip into this mount right here. And we'll throw a flange nut right on that. We'll just loosely tighten that in place for right now. We're going to slip 2 bolts through the top of our upper bracket into the frame bracket. There's a hole on either side and a hole on the bracket up here. There's also a larger hole kind of in the bottom here, so you can get your finger in there and kind of press up on the carriage bolt to help guide it into place. Not gonna lie, this is a little bit of a fight, but as long as you kind of left your brackets a little looser, it should give you enough wiggle room to kind of work it into place a little bit easier. I'm gonna use a flathead to just kind of pry up on it too, make it a little bit easier for me because it's tight space. starting to poke through. There we go. And we'll put a flange nut on that as well. Next, we're going to tighten all our hardware down, starting with the two on our frame rail bracket. We want to make sure that our air spring's sitting straight up, but we'll slide the bracket back. Make sure that's sitting nice and flush against our frame. And tighten that a little bit more before we start torquing it down. Now we can get the front bolt right here. On the lower brackets, there is going to be one bolt on both of them that's going to be hidden. And what I've done is I've popped it through, and it's inside of our bracket right here. What I've done is I've popped in a flange nut into our 9/16 socket, and we're going to slip this in using an extension and try and line that up. Now that we have all those other bolts all torqued down, what we're going to do is get those two bolts that we initially put on when we were putting on the upper bracket onto the air bellows. We left them loose at first so that you could slide that bracket back and forth, so that way when you're getting into position you can have it so that the air bag is actually sitting straight up and down. You want it nice and perpendicular. You don't want it kind of sitting crooked or anything like that, because then you're running into the risk of something breaking. These are impossible to get to with an actual ratchet wrench, just because the frame rail's in the way and you got everything else. So I highly recommend getting a ratcheting wrench, a 9/16, and you can just kind of sit there and slowly snug those down. Now that our hardware is all tightened and torqued down, we can go ahead and run our air lines through. While we're doing this, we're going to make sure that we're keeping in mind that anything that's going to be hot, anything that's going to be moving, we don't want our air lines near, because there's the potential that we could damage the air lines. Then we'll lose all pressure on our air springs, and then they're not going to be effective. When cutting your air lines, you want to make sure that you're using a nice sharp tube cutter. This has a nice sharp razor blade on it. It's going to get a nice straight cut, and we're not going to have a bunch of burrs. So if you try cutting it with your knife, you could end up having stuff like that, those little burrs, little bits of plastic from the airline tubing. That's going to cause a seal failure. If you don't cut it perfectly straight, so you can see there's an angle to this one right here, then that's also going to cause an issue, because only a portion of it is fully seating in. So it has to be perfectly straight across, a nice flat and clean cut. This kit's going to come with two separate air lines. They'll actually be connected together. You'll want to just put them half and half and then cut it. What I did with it is I have it running out so that we're staying away from our exhaust. So on both sides, the exhaust is super close. We actually are, right after this, are going to show you how to put on a heat shield to protect the other airbag, because the exhaust is actually a lot closer than it is on this side. But following along with our airline, I ran it out to the outside of the frame, and I have it just kind of running right over the top, and I've thrown in a zip tie at this point back here. So we have a factory wiring that's running out, and then I've kind of looped it around and brought it back into where we have it coming out through the bumper. Now they say that you can wind these up a little bit tighter. I left them looser just in case. It's out of the way. I have it up above where our spare tire is going to sit, and I've left it with enough slack that it can kind of move a little bit, especially as our suspension works up and down. That way we don't have anything get caught and then it kind of gets ripped out or anything like that. But I have tightened it up enough to where we don't have to worry about anything kind of sitting down too low and getting caught on something. Now we're going to mount up the Schrader valves for our air springs. To do so, typically you're going to just screw a couple of holes. We use a 5/16 drill bit, and typically you'll put it in the rear bumper, somewhere around your license plate area. There's a lot of plastic in this area, and then you're not kind of fighting anything because it's nice and flat on the back side. With my driver's side, I'm going to first thread on a nut. This is going to be a jam nut so that we can tighten it up from the back. We're going to have our star washer, which is going to slip on. We'll pass through our driver's side on that side. And then we're going to place this little rubber gasket on. I have to kind of push it from the back just to kind of keep it from popping back out. We'll have a flat washer and then another nut, and we'll tighten that down. Using 2 1/2-inch wrenches, I am going to hold one on the back with our nut that we first put on, and then another on the front, and we'll just keep tightening that down. Popped off. But with our heat shield, it's a pretty flexible metal. I've mocked it up by just holding it up against here and kind of pressing against it. And then there's 2 tabs on it, so you can slide your hose clamp through. I've already taken the hose clamp apart, so we can just pop it right on. And we'll turn it so that it's kind of blocking the heat away from our bag. Then we can start tightening these up. These are going to require an 8mm socket. I got one just in my hand, just to kind of start this, and then we can run it down with our wrench. You want to kind of close the hose clamp with your hands as you're tightening it up, just to get it started, get a few threads through. Now the last thing to do is just check for any leaks. With our setup right now, there's only one point that we could really be leaking from, which is on top of the bags. There isn't really a great way to get our camera in there to show it, so this is going to be just me talking about it here. But what we'll do is we'll get our air chuck put on, and we're going to put it to about 50 psi, which is about halfway because this goes up to 100. We're a little bit higher. On the other side. All right, we're at 60 on both. Now we can go and we'll use some soapy water. We'll just kind of spray it in there, and what we're looking for is any air bubbles. If you start seeing bubbles spewing out from on top of the bag, then we know we don't have a good connection, and we're going to need to pop that back out and recut it, because typically what happens is the airline didn't have a very straight cut, and it maybe has some little burrs or something like that. If that gets in there into that little valve, it's not going to have a good seal. It's not going to bite onto it properly, and you're going to have continuous leaks. All right, we found a little bit better of a spot. We can see it through the wheel. If I spray a little bit more on here to give you a better idea what the testing's like. If we start seeing big bubbles pop out right at that fitting, then we know we have a leak. Since we found no leaks, we're going to go ahead and drop our PSI back down to 5. That way this isn't such a rough ride since there's nothing on here yet. So we'll just take our air chuck. We can press in on our Schrader valve and get it on there. Now that we get these back down to 5 psi, we can put our heat shield back on and reinstall our spare tire, and that'll be it. That will do it for today's look at and installation of the Air Lift LoadLifter 5000 air spring kit here in our 2025 Ram 1500. My name's Kevin, and if this video didn't help you, or you still need help picking out the right suspension upgrade for your Ram, please feel free to reach out via phone call, email, or a comment on this video, and we'd be happy to help you out.